So I'm going to go ahead and call to order this regular session of the Bloomington City Council here on May 21st. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ruff. Rallo.
Here.
Piedmont Smith.
Here.
Stassberg.
Here.
Daly.
Here.
Zulik.
Here.
And Asari.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So first, I'm always trying to draw some attention to something related to equity or justice, et cetera, et cetera. And tonight, I just wanted to draw attention to something I consider a basic right in the United States, which is voting. And I've generally taken for granted that I have the right to vote and that voting is easy and accessible, but I'm drawing attention to it tonight since earlier this week our election board did not approve a shift to vote centers, which would have made voting easier and more accessible for more people being allowed to vote in more locations. And so that, of course, made me, prompted me to look up the history of voting and the right to vote and all of those things, which is, of course, way more than I can consolidate in just a couple of minutes, but a couple of things specifically that I wanted to share, that in 1870, black men were allowed to vote, and that feels like a really long time ago, but it wasn't until 1964 that the 24th Amendment prohibited poll taxes on federal elections. So you literally had to pay in order to vote. And so, of course, that disenfranchises anybody who's not able to pay to vote, which actually isn't that different in some ways from today because there is so much money in politics right now. So that's sort of an interesting connection as well. And then I also wanted to highlight that in 1965, the Voting Rights Act passed, requiring that state and local jurisdictions run changes through the Justice Department so that there could be some assurance that local election laws did not have the effect of suppressing votes, but in 2013, the Supreme Court gutted that act and no longer required changes to be submitted to the Justice Department, and that's one of those things that have paved the way for all of these stricter laws around voter IDs and that sort of thing, culminating in a current bill being debated, the SAVE Act, which would again increase barriers to getting the proper identification so that people can vote. So voting is something that I take for granted, and maybe it's something that some of you take for granted, but that is something that should not be taken for granted, and we need to remember that it has not actually been all that many years since those rights were allotted to everybody. So with that said, I'll move into our agenda summation for this evening. We have no minutes for approval. So we will start with report time. We will have reports from council members, and then we will have reports from the mayor and city offices, where we will hear from the Commission on Aging and the Commission on the Status of Women. We will then have a report from council committees, where we do have a report from the Committee on Council Processes this evening. And then we will have our first period of public comment, so that will be the first time the public can comment on anything not on the agenda. Public would have 3 minutes during that period to make a comment on anything not on the agenda. After reports, we will have appointments to boards and commissions, and I did not see any of those in the packet tonight. Are there any appointments that I missed? I don't think so. And then we will have legislation for first readings. We'll have ordinance 2025-21 and 2025-22, which both authorize and approve a payment in lieu of taxes or pilot agreement, one with Cambridge Square Apartments of Bloomington and one with Henderson Court Housing. Then we will move into legislation for second readings and resolutions. We will have 4 ordinances that make mostly small amendments to Title 20, the Unified Development Ordinance. Those are Ordinance 2025-11, 2025-12, 2025-13, and 2025-14. Then we will have Appropriation Ordinance 2025-06, related to appropriating food and beverage tax funds to the Monroe County Capital Improvement Board. And then our last piece of legislation is Resolution 2025-09, authorizing allocation of Jack Hopkins Social Service Program funds for the year 2025. After legislation for the evening, we will have an additional period of public comment, just in case anybody anybody else feels like they want to have a comment on something not on the agenda. As a reminder, you can only speak at one of those 2 periods of public comment. Any notes on council schedule will follow, and then we will adjourn. So since there's no minutes for approval, if we want to do council member reports and I'll start down on my right with council member Ruff tonight.
Yeah, I just want to explain real quick my shades. I just had a...
You look cool, council member Ruff.
I'm trying to be super cool. But I just had an eye exam today, and yeah, the light is overwhelming me, so that's why.
Well, I hope that your eyes are okay. Councilmember Rallo.
No report, thanks.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
No report, thank you.
Councilmember Asari.
I have just a handful of general updates, and maybe in no particular order, but the first one, I think both it's been, I think, reported and we've talked colloquially amongst council members about Councilmember Piedmont Smith and myself had the distinct, privilege of attending a meeting with the Lieutenant Governor on Monday. Feels like a year ago, but and as much as everything's been reported around, the maybe appropriately sort of reaction that they received, I think that there's a bit of the conversation that I'd like to highlight, which is identifying areas in which the city of Bloomington, the county, can partner with the Lieutenant Governor to really forward the well-being of people in Monroe County, particularly within his agenda around agriculture, within his agenda around tourism and hospitality and workforce development, all things that I think are quite relevant to our economy and to the people who live here. And so I certainly look forward to continuing to try to work with the Lieutenant Governor in their office to further any efforts in those spaces. And I just wanted to say, I think, again, for the record, I'm very grateful that the Lieutenant Governor came here because so often our federal and state politicians tend to avoid coming to Monroe County. So I, for one, was very, very grateful for the engagement and the opportunity to talk and listen. Secondly, we will be hearing about the Jack Hopkins Fund tonight. We do have a report, but we'll share that, I guess, at our subsequent meeting because it didn't make it onto the agenda. But just generally speaking, yesterday we wrapped up the meetings of the committee, and it was I think a very successful time. So I'll look forward to reporting out on that a bit more. We had an EDC meeting yesterday as well, and that's going to be coming to us. The recommendations from that meeting will be coming to us at our next meeting around continuation or our approval of tax abatements. We had a handful of things that we highlighted as the committee to the EDS department. That they're going to make a couple of tweaks before bringing it to council, but I'm happy to answer any questions ahead of time if anybody has any questions about that. And then this morning, attended the BEDC's monthly gathering. It was a really fantastic meeting where we got a presentation from the president of IU Health, and he talked quite a bit about the challenges that I think we're all aware of, things like workforce shortages, financial pressures, but he also highlighted a lot of really positive things for the community. For example, IU Health in Southern Indiana was just again awarded with a magnet recognition. I think there's only 4 other hospital systems in the United States that have that recognition. So that was great news, and they've launched 2 new residency programs in hopes of attracting more doctors to this region, and they've launched a bunch of new programs like robotic surgery, which is helping to reduce some pressures around waiting times and those type of things to critical medical services. So in short, I've had a very productive week. To you.
Great. Thank you. Sounds like it. Councilmember Zulek.
Thank you. Just some small updates, and I'll share some wins with y'all. Last Friday, I met with the Streetlight Queen, Chris Smith, in Public Works to talk about getting better lighting on the corridor of Indiana between 10th and 14th. For those of you who don't know, that is right in the middle of my district, and it's really the only corridor from campus into the northwest corner of District 6. And so quite a lot of my constituents, specifically college students, take that route, and the lighting is not adequate for the amount of people who are on that street. And so I'm really excited to announce that we are hopefully going to be getting 5 new lights just right on those 4 blocks. And the lights that are already there will be replaced with LED lights, and new lights will be going up. So hopefully our people can feel a little safer. And then just in regard to the closure of Kirkwood, I'll just shout out Shelly Stramitis from Bloomington Transit, who has been working really hard on this project and pushing really hard for it. But there will be shuttles during the lunch and dinner hours on Kirkwood from 11 to 2 and 5 to 9. It's similar to kind of a taxi in the way that you can either flag it down or you can call it on the Bloomington Transit app. So we're really excited. That starts in June, and if you would like to use it, please do. And I believe it's from 1st to 10th in Indiana to Rogers, so it's a pretty big area. And yeah, this is really part of a bigger initiative to make sure that every person, regardless of their mobility capabilities, can enjoy Kirkwood. So very happy about that, and that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Daley.
Yeah, thank you. Can we talk about the Monroe County Public Library and how amazing it is? I just want to, kind of remind everybody how fantastic libraries are. And you can just use them for so many things beyond just your books. But I mean, come on, books alone are enough, right? But did you know you can borrow toys from them for your kids? You get free seeds from them at our library. Audiobooks, movies. You can stream movies at home from them, get your ebooks. They have a library of things, right? My son took out a huge plastic box of baking items to come home and bake bread. They have services, community programming. You can go sit there and use the internet for free. I mean, we were all probably library kids, right? And that we don't grow out of that, right? We still love libraries. They're phenomenal. They're amazing. Summer reading programs, come on, right? We need these as adults. But with federal cuts right now, libraries, museums, all these other places that we love and take for granted are being threatened. And all of those really cool things that we take for granted every day are endangered. So I would hate to see any of these items, services, resources cut for us. So let's just remember how much Monroe County Public Library needs us, as much as we need them. So support them in any way that you can. Friends of the library, go to their book sales, volunteer at the library. You can go to their webpage and find out how you can volunteer. Just use them more and be around, and remember to tell your librarian how much you love them. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that Councilmember Piedmont Smith might have a report after all. Is that correct?
Thank you. So I just wanted to also make a statement about Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith's visit to our county on Monday to the Ellettsville Town Hall. I guess it's a good thing that he came to Monroe County, which is a known Democratic county. But he was not listening. He was blatantly not listening to his constituents. And he was gleefully, with a smirk on his face, spouting all kinds of unfounded assertions about U.S. history, about transsexuality, about tariff impacts, about public education. It was not useful, it was not helpful, it was only frustrating. So if that's what he's going to be like at town hall meetings, then I, for one, am not going to actually be grateful for him having those kind of meetings. Furthermore, he insulted our local county government, which I was not pleased with. So he enjoyed himself, so at least somebody did. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have a report tonight. As people have been sharing their reports, I've been reminded of other things that I wanted to make sure to say. So let's hope that I got it all down. First, I would like to send a reminder to my colleagues. There should be an email in your inbox about an invitation, a stakeholder invitation to discuss the Bloomington branding initiative. So if you could respond to that and potentially set up an appointment. It was actually a really interesting conversation I had with them. And for residents out there who also want to chime in about the branding initiative that Bloomington is doing in terms of like who we are as a city and as a community, there is a community survey that you can complete. If you go to wearebloomington.com, that's wearebloomington.com. There should be a link right there to take that survey and kind of chime in about how you define Bloomington and what Bloomington means to you, and give feedback into that initiative. Secondly, I want to highlight that on Tuesday, June 3rd at 3:30, the Convention Center is having the groundbreaking. So everybody is invited to that. And so that is, once again, Tuesday, June 3rd at 3:30 in the afternoon at the new Convention Center site. And then lastly, I just want to send out just a general slew of congratulations to all of the MCCSC graduates. I have attended, last week I was at my child's 8th grade graduation. I heard from somebody else that they have an 8th grade graduation to attend tonight. I saw a 6th grade graduation photo on Facebook this week, and I know that there's kindergarten graduations out there too that are kind of being staggered through our school system. So congratulations to all of those graduates and their families at whatever level they're at, and a future congratulations to all of our high school seniors who are going to graduate, I think, on June 30th. I think North and South might both be that night. I'm not. June 30th, May 30th. Anyway, end of the month, and that is just a really, really exciting time for all of those current seniors about to be new graduates. So just congrats to all of those young adults on these milestones. So moving on from council member reports then to reports from the mayor and city offices. We will start with the Commission on Aging. Who is here for that? Hi. If you could go ahead and state your name for the record.
My name is Sandra McGow. All right. Is it up there? All right, so again, my name is Sandra McGow. I proudly serve as a commissioner on the City of Bloomington Commission on Aging. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight and present our 2024 annual report. We're proud of what we've accomplished this year and excited to share with you our goals for 2025. Okay. The Commission on Aging is comprised of 9 dedicated commissioners from diverse personal and professional backgrounds, each at different stages of life. Together, we share a common mission to promote solutions that address the challenges faced by older adults in Bloomington and to celebrate their many contributions to our community. So our work focuses on exploring the issues and needs of older adults while raising public awareness. We collaborate with community members and organizations to build bridges and to foster dialogue, encourage programming, and create a more inclusive and supportive environment for those that are aging and for them to age in place. So looking back at 2024, some of the Commission on Aging's highlights include all of our commissioners are now trained through Dementia Friendly Indiana, strengthening our understanding and our advocacy efforts. We joined forces with the Bloomington Blue Zones Initiative, attending cooking classes, book clubs, walking clubs, and other events aligned with promoting healthy aging. We revised and redistributed the Senior Resource Guide, originally developed in 2023, ensuring it remains a reliable tool for our residents, service providers, nonprofits, local businesses throughout Monroe County. And then the Commission proudly served as a contributing partner to WTIU's Regional Conference on Aging, further expanding our reach and our engagement efforts. So our goals for 2025, as we look forward to 2025, we've established some new goals while also remaining focused on our long-term initiatives. In the first quarter of 2025, we updated our Senior Resource Guide yet again, actually by splitting it into two separate guides, one for general resources and one for healthcare-specific resources. These new guides were distributed for the first time at the 50 Plus Expo last week, and they're also available on our website. Earlier this month, the Commission hosted our first Senior Living 101 seminar right here in this room, which included information on topics like independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, home health, hospice, and our goal is to host additional Senior Living 101 seminars later this year. In November 2025, the Commission will highlight aging and the arts by featuring artwork by local senior artists in the City Hall display case. And then the Commission also intends to maintain our collaboration with Dementia Friendly Bloomington and to continue supporting their efforts while staying up to date on all of our trainings. As ongoing initiatives, the Commission will continue to advocate for and support ideas on establishing a permanent local senior center and improving transportation options for our seniors. So, how can you support us? Well, the Commission on Aging invites you to attend our monthly meetings. They're held on the second Monday of each month at 3 p.m. in the McCloskey Conference Room right down the hall. And to learn more about Dementia Friendly Bloomington, the Blue Zones Initiative, or access the updated Senior Resource Guides, please visit our website. And then again, just thank you for your time and your support. We welcome questions, feedbacks, collaboration as we work to make Bloomington a more age-friendly community for everyone. Thanks.
Great, thank you. You might want to stick around because I think we have at least one question. Yeah, the questions.
I'll take them.
Councilmember Asari.
Yeah.
And everyone, thank you all so much for the work that you do. I'm particularly concerned about the proportion of caregivers. So I'll give more background than probably is necessary for this, but just to not give a question that you'd be able to answer, but would it make sense in this context? But it's something like 30% of the, I'm sorry, let me re-speak. There's something like 5,000 people that may be affected by things like Alzheimer's or dementia, and we have very few services, particularly social services for them, and very few services for their partners, who are often caregivers. And so I was curious what type of things we can do as a city to better serve people who are suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's or any other such things, and then if you could reflect broader in a broader sense about how do we support not just the aging, but also, well, I mean, in many cases their partners are also aging, but the caregivers as well.
These are great questions. Marissa, is she around? Can I go ahead? Okay, this is a great question. So there's some great resources in this town. We have the Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Service in town, and I know that there's been talks of potential cuts in that area. So anything we can do to advocate for that group, and that's an IU Health Bloomington entity. So that's through Community Health with IU Bloomington. And so that's certainly something we could support. There are lots of support groups in town, and that group helps lead some of those support groups. But we do, at least with the commission, we are advocating what those support groups are and sharing what those support groups are, through that resource guide. So that's a way that we're hoping that we can get that information out. So not just for the people living with dementia, but for the caregivers. Certainly, the impact that it has on them takes quite a toll. Another thing that you really could help us with is, Bloomington's so blessed blessed. We have so many resources for our seniors. We really do, more than you would even think. People struggle, our seniors struggle to access those resources, and transportation continues to be an issue for our seniors. And so how can we help our rural transit, our city transit, and then even those private medical transportation companies, how can they all work together to really address this issue? That's something I think about a lot. I don't have the answers, but that's something certainly that we need to look into. Our seniors are oftentimes isolated. Many of them are homebound, and so all these great resources kind of go to waste if they can't access them. So whatever we can do to support that. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. And could you give some sense of the amount of people that are in need of those transportation resources particularly?
Yeah, I would not be the right person to give you a number. I certainly can look that up, and we can have Marissa follow up with that. But it's Alzheimer's disease is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States. So certainly there's a need, and it's growing for training, not just for communities that are senior living communities, not just for those communities, but just the greater population. So dementia-friendly Bloomington helps businesses be a place where it's dementia-friendly, right, the concept. So things as simple as in the bathroom stalls, it's not all white, right? So people don't realize that folks living with dementia, actually, their vision is impaired too throughout that process. And something as little as that, but not making the stalls and the toilets and everything one same color, bringing some contrast in those. So those are the things Dementia-Friendly Bloomington looks at. There are several ways that you can be certified as a dementia-friendly business. So a coffee shop, the library. I think the library, of course, is dementia-friendly. Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but yeah, okay, wonderful.
3 other questions, but I'll let everybody ask first.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? Councilmember Rallo.
Thank you. Oops. I was just looking at your financial report, and you don't expend very much money. You had a conference.
Printing.
Right. So I wondered about, our budget's coming up, and we're going to be reviewing. We have financial support for various boards and commissions. Mm-hmm. Are you in certain need for any resources, for printed materials? You have support through the Bloomington Community and Family Resources Department, but do you require more in terms of a budget?
I personally think we need more for printing and getting in mass distribution of our resource guides. I would love an opportunity for that, but I'm going to defer to Marissa on that one.
Hi, my name is Marissa Parscott. I'm the city liaison for the Commission on the Commission on Aging. I'm sorry. This commission doesn't do a lot of, obviously, events like some of CFRD's other commissions do that cost money. But I would say that the printing costs for, especially when we initially redistribute these updated guides, we do print them in-house, upstairs. We run them through our brochure folding machine, and our CFRD department costs department budget probably eats those printing costs, but that probably is the largest need that the Commission on Aging would need at this point in terms of budget money.
So the expenses are essentially fairly well covered at this point.
Yeah.
If the commission has any further needs, I'm sure we would like to hear them for any events or any sort of outreach or that sort of thing. But it sounds like, at least in terms of brochures and things like that.
Yeah, we're okay.
You're good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you for your report and the updates. I thought I saw in the written report a mention of a senior center Is that something you're pursuing, and
So
where are you at with that?
Bloomington has a wonderful senior center through Area 10 Agency on Aging. It's called the Enright East. It's in the College Mall, but it's not permanent. And so that's where the emphasis of we need a permanent local senior center, just the nature of the College Mall and rental fees and what that looks like. And then, of course, the potential funding cuts through Area 10 and being a AAA itself. We're exploring our options there and how we can advocate for that and support that. But we do know that there is a need for a permanent local senior center. Ellettsville has one, but Bloomington doesn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on that because I wanted to ask also about the Enright Center and the relationship between the Commission on Aging and the Enright Center and the desire for a permanent senior center, which I've also raised as being something that I think would be really great for Bloomington. But do you have any thoughts as a commission on what kind of space it is that you would be looking for in terms of?
I don't have any thoughts off the top. I mean, permanent. I really don't. Just enough space to be able to do exercises, to host support groups, to do different things at the same time, right? But like square footage, I couldn't tell you like that. And we have explored accessibility, obviously, yeah. Thank you, Marissa. But we have explored a couple years ago, we looked at partnering with the local YMCA, they already have existing space and they already host classes. Would that be a great partnership? And so, of course, it's not something that we're necessarily leading, but we want to support Area 10 in finding that permanent place. So I don't know that I have the exact answer for that, but I know that we want to be able to do several different things. We want to be able to do a support group while having an art class, while also maybe being able to have yoga class. And so if a space accommodates that, that's what we're looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions? Councilmember, sorry.
Thank you, I wanted also to apologize that I formed my first question in a way that
It was
seems
fine.
like reacting to which is, I had all these other questions, but following up on Dave's question here, if you were to inform things that you'd like the city to be investing in to address the needs of the aging, so outside of what we could give to the commission, like thinking about structural investments and changes that are needed in Bloomington, what would those be?
Man, I don't know that I have a great answer. I'm curious, has this building been looked at as dementia friendly? I don't know, maybe we could start there. Have we had anyone come and look at just the accessibility for folks living with dementia and their caregivers? I don't know. I don't know that that's reasonable, but maybe that's a start.
But then outside of those suffering from dementia, because not every person who's aging is suffering from dementia, right? So, right, but also, questions about aging in place and what are the other, where should our priorities be as a city government when we're setting budget, when we're making laws? In support of the elderly.
So I just go back to my original thought of just transportation. Truly, I think that's the elephant in the room when I'm in conversations with people who work in senior living like I do, when I work with other senior advocates, home health providers. The elephant in the room is accessibility for our seniors. So we have great resources in this town. We just can't get people to them.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Seeing that we're already 16 minutes into the mayor and city office report time, I would like to extend that time until, I'll start with 7:15, because we need to have the report on the Commission of the Status of Women. So if you would like to come forward and state your name for the record, and
my name is
if
Shayla
we have a lot of questions and we need to extend that time again, we probably can.
My name is Shayla George. Okay. Good evening, council members. My name is Shayla George again. I'm proudly serving as a commissioner on the City of Bloomington Status of Women. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of our commission and present our 2024 annual report. We're proud to reflect on the meaningful work completed this past year and share our vision for 2025 and beyond. Our commission is made up of 9 dedicated commissioners who are united in our mission to advocate for gender equity and improve opportunities for everyone who embraces a female identity. We pursue this mission by understanding and responding to the needs of women in our community, celebrating women's achievements and contributions, monitoring and reviewing policies that impact women's lives, encouraging inclusive and equitable legislation, engaging meaningfully with community members. The BSCW welcomes everyone who identifies as a woman and those who support our women-focused goals and values. Looking back in 2024, some of our biggest 2024 highlights include the 2024 Women's History Month Luncheon, where we hosted 261 attendees and 15 exhibit tables from local organizations and businesses and recognized our annual Women's Achievement Award winners. We held our second annual Women's Market at City Hall, which featured a unique lineup of 32 women identifying local artists and vendors. And for the first time, the BCSW hosted the Young Women's Leadership Summit here in council chambers that was attended by 82 middle and high school students from area schools. The 2024 summit theme was Bloom, Growing into Your Best Self. We also did some commission restructuring with the implementation of BCSW subcommittees, which help us directly align our work with the bylaws, vision, and mission of the commission. These subcommittees include legislation, communication, and community engagement. And then moving forward into 2025, we've set some new goals for existing programs to ensure they come back each year better than ever. Our 2025 Women's History Month Luncheon, while still focusing on uplifting and inspirational nature of this event, we also needed to restructure our sponsorship package and adjust ticket pricing in order to offset rising event costs. For our 2025 Women's Market, we will be exploring ideas on how to create more space for the women's market in order to accommodate more vendors while also increasing marketing and advertising. For our 2025 Young Women's Leadership Summit, the BCSW is excited to host yet another fun, educational, and valuable summit for area middle and high school students. We hope to increase collaboration with MCCSC and surrounding school districts to ensure all students are aware of the summit and feel welcome to attend. And then finally, our BCSW subcommittees. The BCSW intends to further utilize our newly established legislation, communication, and community partnership subcommittees in order to best serve our mission. And then finally, how can you support? We welcome council members and the community to get involved with our work. Attend our monthly public meetings held on the first Thursday of each month at 5:30 p.m. in the Hooker Conference Room. And then join us for the 2025 Women's Market taking place Saturday, August 23rd from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the City Hall atrium and council chambers. Thank you again for your time, your partnership, and your ongoing support of the BCSW. We're happy to answer any questions, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions from council members? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you for your report and your updates. I was wondering about the Communications Committee. In the written report, it says the goal is to inform the Bloomington Commission on the status of women, of opportunities, legislation, and happenings. Is it more of an inward communications committee, or is it to inform the public about things?
Marissa Parscott again. I think it's a little bit of both. It's kind of an inward subcommittee where those 3 commissioners that sit on that subcommittee are kind of responsible for knowing things that are going on locally, and how we can better inform ourselves of what's going on in the community and how we can engage. Of course, on the other end of that, it could also be sharing information with our community about things. But I think the main ideal of it is as kind of an internal subcommittee that keeps all commissioners aware of ways that we can continue to engage with the community.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Any other questions? I have one real fast. In terms of the Women's History Luncheon, and you talked about changing ticket prices to just reflect the realities of costs of events. Do you guys have scholarships or anything like that attached to that event to make sure that it's accessible for people who might not be able to pay that price? price?
We do. Even we have donors and sponsors that will buy half of a table for tickets or things like that. We have individual donors that will purchase scholarship tickets, and I just kind of keep them off to the side. And we used all of them this year. We had 10
Okay.
scholarship tickets. And
How do you identify people for those scholarship tickets?
mainly through contacts and connections. They reach out to us. You know, or even local organizations, Middle Way House, for example, reached out and said, you know, we've got a couple clients that we think would like to attend the luncheon, and of course we issue scholarship tickets to folks like that. But I had 2 different community members email me personally and say, you know, ticket price is a little steep, and of course we had that ticket available for them to be able to attend.
Cool, thank you. I'm glad that there's that option out there, and not to overwhelm you with requests like that, but just for anybody out there listening who's thought to themselves, I really want to experience this. It would be potentially valuable personally, but haven't been able to afford it. There's options that exist.
Well, and it's been important to us as when we did have to sort of increase ticket price to offset some of those rising event costs. A big goal for the BCSW is to never make this event feel inaccessible to regular community members or anyone that would want to attend. And I'd like to beef those scholarship ticket numbers up, even if I could. And so we're grateful for the ones that we have, and we're conscious of maybe the rising need for them if we have to increase ticket prices in years moving forward.
Great, thank you. I guess that's a double ask then, if you're out there thinking to yourself, oh, I could help out with that. Or if you're a company that might, you know, want to sponsor that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's your contact.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions at all from council members? Great. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
report, Ms. George. We appreciate all of the work that you do on the commission.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on then to our council committee reports. We have a report from the Committee on Council Processes in our packet. So I assume Councilmember Piedmont Smith, you are going to do that as chair of that committee?
Sure.
Great.
Yes, we have 2 requests for the full council. The first is a proposal for council member liaisons to boards and commissions. We have the proposal in your packet, and I'll just read the value statement here that Councilmember Zulik and I worked on, and that was adopted by the committee. So city council members should be aware of the work that city boards and commissions are doing throughout the year so they can be well informed of the issues facing our residents and better advocate for legislation that may address these issues. In addition, our resident boards and commissions should have a clear line of communication with the Bloomington City Council to share the results of their work and offer their input on relevant matters that come before the council. So we propose that council members be assigned to boards and commissions within the structure of their interview committees to act as liaisons, and they would attend at least one of each board and commission meeting each year as liaison, and then bring forward any proposals from those commissions to the interview committee to discuss, and also communicate to the commission or board if there is relevant legislation coming toward the council that they would like some input on, and generally serve as a point of contact with the chair and the staff liaison of the commission. So we have outlined, a proposal for how the liaisons would be selected, and we took the opportunity to recommend a few changes in the interview committees, which commissions each one is responsible for, so that more similar commissions were together in case a liaison, was interested in a certain area and wanted to have both of those commissions as their purview. And then at the end of our proposal, you'll see that there are also 5 entities that currently do not have any appointments from the city council. The city council doesn't appoint anybody to these boards or commissions, but we think it's important to have a liaison. So it didn't fit in the interview committee structure. So we recommended that the council president make those appointments, and preferably for multiple years. So that is the proposal, and we are happy to answer any questions. So it was Councilmember Zulik, Daley, and Flaherty who are serving on that committee with me.
Thank you. Are there questions from council members about this proposed, I'll call it a change to both the interview committees and also how the interview committees, or how each of us as counselors need to interact with boards and commissions? Any questions, any comments, any feedback of any kind at all? Oops. Okay, I'll give some feedback then. I have no problem with this as an idea, but I'm in trying to figure out how it moves forward. It would need a resolution to change the committees, correct? And then I, as president, would need to change the committee assignments, or like the council members assigned to the committees, switching Piedmont, Smith, and Flaherty, right? So I could do that without a resolution, but we would need a resolution to switch the CAPS committee with the Commission on Hispanic and Latina Affairs, right? And then probably...
Because some of these the 8 committees or commissions under each interview committee, that does not reflect what is under those interview committees now.
Oh,
So
some of those are different as well.
yeah, it's not just the one
Okay.
change. The one change I made in strike-through is something that I personally made after our committee approved it. That's why I wanted to call that out.
I understand. Okay. I don't think I got that when it was written. But then also with the liaison appointments to commissions with no council member appointees, that would also need a resolution, right? Because if we're gonna kind of like assign that job to the council president, doesn't that need to be like an official act? I don't know who I should ask that to right now.
I would think so, yes.
Okay. So.
Yes, so the vote on the proposal tonight would not be the end of what we would need to do to implement this.
Yeah, I'm not, should we even take a vote on it tonight? Or, I mean, does anybody have objection? Maybe this is the question. Does anybody have objection to the concept behind these changes? Because it does, like, and I mean, it assigns us more work as council members, right? Because we need to be liaisons to these commissions. So does anybody have any objections to that? Councilmember?
Could you repeat that? Are we going to vote on something? And could you?
I don't think that
elaborate?
we can vote on anything tonight, really, or I'm not sure that do we need to?
I would like a vote on it. This is a proposal, and if there's not a majority in favor of this proposal, then I would like to know that so that we avoid doing work that we don't need to do.
Yeah, so I guess that's why I'm asking, like, is there objection? For this proposal? Yeah. Councilmember, sorry.
I think, I mean, the core question, right, is how do you strengthen commissions, make them, more directly related to the things that that the council and city government do, and I think that this is the best idea that's been proposed to make sure that that there's a two-way level of communication, both coming from council to the commission, so that they're very aware of what we do. I think I've commented on this often, that when we ask commissions, what do you want us to do? And their answer is show up. It sort of says to me that, there's a lot of things that are within our toolbox and within our authority, and sometimes they're unaware of that, but also what they're asking for is for us to show up. So I think that's great. We should do that then. I mean, my only concern is just that, we do have a sort of it's adding more meetings to lots of meetings that we already attend, and that's, I mean, so our ability to do that faithfully and consistently might be difficult, but I think I'm totally committed to the idea of this, and should we adopt it, I would be very happy to stand behind it.
Thank you for that feedback. And for clarity, it does say in here that it has our expectations, which is attending one meeting a year for each of the boards and commissions, as opposed to attending all the meetings. So at least a minimum of one meeting a year for each of the commissions that we would be liaising with.
And there'll be one person per commission, or would we rotate through?
One person per commission. Yeah, that would ideally probably, I think every year, technically, our interview committees could change right now in terms of how it's written in. So it might actually be useful to more deliberately say, barring some huge problem, these interview committees are for the length of your term, and then these liaison assignments should also maybe be for the length of, actually, I don't know. That would be an interesting question, whether it should be for the length of term so that then there's the consistency, or whether council members should have exposure to more committees. So
yeah, I like that. I like that suggestion in the sense that, if you basically create a direct person for each of the on council for each of the committees to be able to talk to and then we can also share that out in our reports, so we're getting more updates and things that are going on. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So generally, you don't have any objection?
No.
Great.
We should approve this.
Well, we don't have any specific legislation to approve, but I think that that gives the feedback to Councilmember Piedmont-Smith that she wants, maybe, of whether or not we should continue working on this. So Councilmember Zulik and Daley, I assume that you guys are on board because you all were on the committee. I feel fine about this personally. Councilmember Ruff.
Had a request to elaborate on one of the points a little bit, where it says, item number 3, interview committees should discuss any resolutions or recommendations passed by their assigned boards and commissions. Can we elaborate on the discuss any? I mean, you mean during a meeting of the interview committee, the 3 interview committee members should discuss whichever item might be before one of the committee members' boards or commissions. That be the extent of it?
Councilmember Zulik, do you want to?
So there are different boards and commissions that do take up pieces of legislation, and if the mayor's administration does not choose to pursue those pieces of legislation, it kind of dies. And so we really should be aware of the work that different commissions are doing, and at least discussing whether or not we want to bring that legislation to the full council.
Oh, sponsored by council rather than by the administration in that case.
Yeah.
Okay, and would it be the responsibility primarily of the chair of that commission or board to, because if council members are maybe going to one meeting a year of that commission, I mean, they could very easily not be aware of some item that's in front of that commission. So would it be the chair of the commission that reaches out to the council members?
Yes, in the proposal, the staff liaison is in direct communication with the specific city council member who's the liaison for that board or commission. And so ultimately, it would be the expectation that the staff member make the city council member aware of the work.
Okay, the staff liaison, not the commission chair, like the citizen that might be. See what I'm saying? Yeah, okay. I just wanted to be clear on that.
Councilmember Ruff, do you have concerns about moving forward with legislation related to this initiative?
No, I just need a little clarification because I know sometimes things like that, balls could get dropped and it wouldn't be clear. I wasn't clear exactly from this language, but I got it now.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rallo?
I don't have any objections. I think this is a good idea. Should we consider having a designated agenda item for reports from council members specific to commissions that they are a liaison to? That is, it seems like there's a lot of engagement. So maybe formalizing that might be a good idea for the opportunity for, council members to report to the council.
Thank you. I think that idea generally, so for the community's benefit, like our agenda is set by Bloomington Municipal Code for regular sessions. And there are other things actually that I kind of think about the set agenda and I go, ugh, like we don't have a good space for example, reports from community entities that have some relationship with the city, but are not actually from the mayor and city offices. And so there's been different times where we've put things under the mayor and city offices, but they're not really mayor and city offices. So that speaks to maybe modifying that agenda a little bit to provide space for that, though it could yeah. Thank you, Councilmember Rollo. Councilmember Piedmont-Smith, does that give you enough feedback in terms of like pursuing this as legislation that it would generally be supported?
Yes. What is the future role of the Committee on Council Processes? Is that committee supposed to draft the legislation?
I think that it's a good question who should draft the legislation right now. Does anybody want to volunteer to draft the legislation? Thank you, Sydney. Or thank you, Councilmember Zulik.
All right. Shall we move on to the other item?
One more quick question. Again, under expectation number 3, would it be up to the interview committee to decide whether something that had been brought to their attention by one of their committees, would it be up to the interview committee members, council members, to decide whether it rises to the level to bring to the whole council?
Councilmember Zulik, yeah.
I would just add that, of course, the interview committee is not a gatekeeper, and so if the interview committee doesn't feel that they want to bring something forward from one of the commissions, the commission chair or the commission staff liaison, of course, could contact other council members as well.
Any other final questions or comments related to this first proposal from the Committee on Council Processes? Okay, Councilmember Piedmont-Smith, do you want to talk about the second part of your report?
So the second request is that we forward a request to the mayor to get an update on organizational equity. So I will just make a motion. I move that the council requests from the mayor's office, A, to provide an update based on its commitments 9 months ago to create a team timeline and so on, to identify areas for improvement and establish a set of priority outcomes on equity in city government, and B, to include and collaborate with the council and community members on this process going forward.
Great, so we have a motion and a second on the table to request from the mayor an update around their commitments to equity last year and to request greater collaboration and communication moving forward. Is that the summary?
It's basically in my memo, items 2A and B.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. I was looking on the wrong page. So can everybody find that? That's on page 34 of our packet right now. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the motion or on there's kind of a page of more explanation about equity-related stuff at the end? Councilmember Rollo.
I think this might be an opportunity we had a debate about salaries last year and pay equity between the lowest paid and the highest paid in the city, and that differential essentially, and Council President Strasburg, you did an excellent job of demonstrating that there seems to be, that the lowest paid in the city seem to be potentially getting further and further behind relative to cost of living increases, and that, you know, the highest paid have more discretionary income. And I think that this should be included because I think it seemed to me that the general sentiment of the council was that we should, that should be addressed, and we should be aware, have that communication with the administration.
Are you wanting to add something to the motion or support the motion?
I support the motion, but I think that perhaps we should have some sort of, we should add pay equity. That differential, I think, is important.
Okay.
Maybe this isn't the time to do it, but I think that it could be included. I'm throwing that out as a proposition.
Okay, so you just want one more specific definition of equity as opposed to just generally saying equity, but also specifically making sure to include pay equity.
That's right.
Okay. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I will just point out in the explanation from Councilmember Flaherty, it was in the context of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts that the queries were sent to the administration during the budget process last year. So that is what we were focused on. I have no objection to including pay equity as well. I don't know whether we need to include that in the motion.
Well, we could modify the motion to just an update based on your commitment to create a team timeline and so on to identify areas of improvement and establish a set of priority outcomes on equity and add including pay equity in city government.
Excellent. I think that covers it.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith, you had the original motion. Does that work for you?
I mean, I'm bringing you what the Committee on Council process has approved. I don't know if I'm in a position to alter it. I mean, we didn't talk about pay equity. It's fine, but it's not something that we talked about. So.
Do any of the other members of the committee want to weigh in on this change to the motion? Councilmember Daley?
No, I don't have any problem with it. I mean, do we just need to approve this motion and then have a second motion to add on to it?
Well, I think that Councilmember Piedmont Smith could withdraw her motion and then do a second motion that includes pay equity, and that would maybe be the cleanest way to do it. Amending the motion would be a little bulky, maybe.
Could we ask Councilmembers?
Councilmember Zulik, do you have thoughts?
I am ambivalent.
Okay, so Councilmember Piedmont Smith, Councilmember, sorry.
I think this is a good moment where maybe the Robert's rules and such doesn't matter too much. Like, we all agree. Send the note to the mayor. Add the additional line on pay equity. Does anybody have a problem with doing that? I think we should just do that.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith, will you amend your motion potentially?
Yes. So I will amend my motion to include, on Part A, establish a set of priority outcomes on equity, parentheses, including pay equity in city government.
Second.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on this motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Who's in charge of then sending that request? Is that going to come from the Committee on Council Processes?
I think the whole point of having us vote is that it would come from the chair, the president of the council.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. That's part I wanted to make sure to clarify who that was supposed to come from. I'll connect with you on that later. All right. Moving on then from our council committee reports to our first session on reports from the public. So if you are a member of the public interested in making a public comment tonight on items not on the agenda, if you could please make your way to the podium if you're in chambers and state your name for the record and sign in. There's something there to sign in, and then you would have up to 3 minutes. And if you are on Zoom right now and would wish to speak, if you could use the reactions tab to raise your hand to indicate your interest or send a chat message to the host. And we are going to go ahead and start here in chambers. Let's make sure, is the timer ready? Great. Please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Sarah Owen, and I am the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Exodus Refugee Immigration Sub-Office here in Bloomington. Exodus Refugee has operated in Bloomington since October of 2021. We started by welcoming the first Afghan refugees from the Afghan evacuation of August 2021. And since that time, our office has welcomed nearly 500 newcomers to the local community, representing over 20 nationalities and more than 20 different languages. Our agency wanted to take this opportunity to speak to the City Council today to reflect on the presence of ICE within our community a few weeks ago. It goes without saying that the collective awareness of ICE resulted in a substantial negative psychological impact on our immigrant neighbors. Even with the legal protections afforded to many Exodus clients due to their refugee status, the perceived threat to both them and to members within their personal communities was enough to impact their sense of personal safety. First and foremost, we extend our thanks to BPD for not participating in ICE's initiatives, and as this helps reinforce trust between the police department and the immigrant community. As part of the cultural orientation that we at Exodus provide our newly arrived clients, we educate them on utilizing first responder services in the event of fire, medical emergency, or threat to personal safety. Many of our clients originate from countries under military or militia control, resulting in an inherent distrust of law enforcement. So again, the fact that BPD did not involve itself with last month's ICE initiatives lends to the establishment of trust with immigrants in our community. Secondly, we wish to recognize and appreciate local and regional news outlets that have helped shed light on Bloomington's immigrant community in recent weeks, both through covering our work as an agency as well as conveying the stress that ICE's presence had imposed on our clients. These news outlets included WFIU and WTIU, the Bloomingtonian, the Herald Times, the Indiana Daily Student, and WTHR Channel 13 News. Looking to the weeks and months ahead, we call on our Bloomington elected officials to continue to speak out against the racist policies of this presidential administration and voice their support for refugees and our Afghan allies. Furthermore, we ask that you make an official recognition of World Refugee Day on June 20th and partner with us to welcome and support refugees in Bloomington. In just 2 days, Exodus will soon be relocating to Councilwoman Zulick's district, as we will be moving our office into First United Methodist Church here in the downtown area. We look forward to fostering a close relationship with her as our council representative. We also look forward to continuing to maintain a regular presence at City Council meetings during the public comment period to help raise awareness of our immigrant neighbors in the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anybody who's raised their hand on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Great, thank you. Let's continue here in chambers then. Please, if you haven't already, sign in, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Steve Boland. I'm speaking tonight as a member of the perhaps now disbanded, but I'm not sure yet, Vote Center Study Committee appointed by the Monroe County Election Board. On Monday, at the most recent meeting of the Election Board, by a 2-to-1 vote, the election board rejected, by not making it a unanimous vote, the proposed plan to go from a precinct-based voting model to a vote center study model, where basically any voter can go to any, what would have been a precinct to vote. This was after the work of about a year and a half of the Vote Center Study Committee, which was 9 members, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, 3 independents. It was an unfortunate turnout. The last time that this idea was explored was in 2011, and it was rejected again for the second. It was rejected again this time. I don't think this is the end of it. I certainly do think that members of this body, as well as members of the public, should continue to, if they believe that vote centers are a good idea, they should continue to lobby members of the election board about it. But the bottom line is, it's hard to tell what I mean, I have a lot of frustrations. I'm sure you can tell. We spent, again, a year and a half developing this report. I would also urge you to look at the Vote Center Study Committee's effort. The 20-some page document is very informative and explains how vote centers work in other counties. But one question that was raised at the election board was, well, was the Vote Center Study Committee biased towards vote centers as opposed to leaving things as they were? The committee's charge was to advocate for centers. It wasn't really up to the committee to say, well, we should or shouldn't. We were charged to develop a plan to do it. It was up to the election board to decide whether or how they would do it. Again, they've decided not to. I don't believe it's permanent. I believe that it can be brought back again, but I think it would take speaking up from people who have some opinion about it. It's not too late for the county to convert to vote centers, but it's increasingly going to be more difficult for the election supervisor to acquire the equipment to do it if we don't act soon. So I'm hoping we can revisit the issue sometime soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Has anybody raised their hand on Zoom?
No.
Okay, thank you. Let's continue here in chambers. I see you signing in. Thank you very much. State your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Madam President. This is Christopher M.G. On behalf of the Greater Bloomington Chamber, resident of Bloomington. I want to echo former council member Steve Boland's last comments. I was there at the meeting on Monday, voicing our support for vote centers, and it disappointed us that this is not moving forward with that, which is another topic for another day. I also want to say that Ms. McGowell's presentation on Commission on Aging was really good. She is one of the true gems of this community and does a lot of great work, so it was great to see her masterfully up at the podium here answering your questions. A couple, just some housekeeping. Again, our Bloomington Showcase is Thursday at Switchyard Park. That is our business expo, music, beer, and plenty of giveaways. So we'd love to see you there. 5 to 8 o'clock on that. Echo Councilmember Strasburg's comments on the groundbreaking for the Convention Center on June 3rd. I'll be there. I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow I'll be at Templeton Field Day, speaking of MCCSC. I don't know what I'll be working on there, but hopefully it doesn't involve water because it is going to be chilly. I'm going to go back to one of my favorite conversations here in my last half, which is the Winslow Sports Park. I was there last week, I think it was Thursday, having one of my community meetings, and it is one of my favorite times. Little League Baseball, and I did see a certain council member there that I'm not going to name. I don't think they want to keep their anonymity, and I understand that. But it is a lot of fun. I talked to a lot of people in that downtime that only baseball allows. Holden Wealth Management, our fine sponsor and chamber member, by the way, has 12 members on the team, all of which are from 12 different schools in the county, which I think is really cool. It gets us a chance to really communicate. But we're facing a problem of rainouts and postponements and cancellations. We're canceled last Tuesday. We're probably looking at the field conditions today going to be canceled. That'll be 12 out of 16. Which is way too many. We need to work on the drainage issue, whether that's turf or that is a French drain in that area. It is for too long not being able to be used on a regular basis, and that includes across the parking lot, the BFC soccer. For those of you in soccer, we do both on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're also part of Bloomington Big Red Baseball, and we don't get to host tournaments. I'm going to be Saturday on my third trip to North Vernon, Indiana. And before my first trip to North Vernon, I had no idea where North Vernon was. I do now, needless to say, and it's about an hour and a half from here. And we're not hosting our own tournaments. This is economic development, a chance to bring people in town, much like the convention center. And we are not tapping into those sort of visitors, those weekend visitors that are going to spend money. So I recommend on the budget cycle of investing in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in chambers who would like to make a public comment during this period? And did we get anybody else on Zoom?
No one.
Great, thank you. Seeing nobody coming forward in chambers, I think that we're ready to move on. I am correct that we do not have any appointments to boards and commissions, right? I didn't just miss something. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and move on to legislation for first readings.
I move that ordinance 2025-21 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded for the clerk to read ordinance 2025-21. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
25-21, authorizing and approving a payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement with Cambridge Square of Bloomington, LP. The synopsis is, the Indiana Code provides the opportunity for municipalities and owner-developers to partner in the development of affordable housing through a payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement per Indiana Code 36-1-8-14.3. This agreement ensures that the city receives some taxes from the property owner on real property subject to a tax exemption under state law. The Indiana Code requires the developer to agree to the terms of the pilot, including the amounts and timing of the payments to the city. The Common Council must approve the pilot by passing an ordinance. If approved, the Cambridge Square pilot will result in the rehabilitation of a 153-unit community of flats designed for residents 62 or older, or differently abled whose incomes are 60% or below the area median income.
Thank you. We will hear discussion and have a vote on that at our next regular session on June 4th.
Ordinance 2025-22 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to introduce ordinance 2025-22. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2025-22, authorizing and approving a payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement with Henderson Court Housing, LP. The synopsis is, the Indiana Code provides the opportunity for municipalities and owner-developers to partner in the development of affordable housing through a payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement per Indiana Code 36-1-8-14.3. This agreement ensures that the city receives some taxes from the property owner on real property subject to a tax exemption under state law. The Indiana Code requires the developer to agree to the terms of the pilot, including the amounts and timing of the payments to the city. The Common Council must approve the pilot by passing an ordinance. If approved, the Henderson Court pilot will result in the rehabilitation of 150 affordable apartment units in an affordable housing community. The pilot will serve families whose household income is 60% or below the area median income.
Thank you. That will also be discussed and voted on June 4th. Moving into second readings and resolutions.
I move that ordinance 2025-11 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to introduce ordinance 2025-11. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2025-11, to amend Title 20, Unified Development Ordinance of the Bloomington Municipal Code regarding technical corrections set forth in the Bloomington Municipal Code 20. The synopsis is, this petition contains corrections or clarifications in the UDO, including reference corrections, removal of unnecessary wording, and syncing references across the UDO. There are 7 amendments identified, some appearing multiple times in the code.
Thank you.
I move that ordinance 2025-11 be adopted.
Second.
Great, thank you very much. It looks like we have a member of planning staff here to introduce this to us. If you could state your name for the record and let us know what this is about.
Great, thank you. Jackie Scanlon, Assistant Director, Planning and Transportation. This is our yearly update. So it's time for the annual update of the Unified Development Ordinance that we've been doing since the overhaul of 2019-2020. And so you will see 4 petitions tonight. This is the first, which is the technical corrections. There were 7 this year. The Plan Commission heard this as case ZO0625 at their March Plan Commission hearing and voted to send the petition to Common Council with a positive recommendation. We are looking at here on the maximum vehicle parking allowance table 2 parking references that were missing the end of their clause. So adding in the words outdoor seating area to the outdoor seating area limitations there. And then we have storage and vehicle equipment renumbering here. So they were as small Roman numerals, and they should have been uppercase letters. So that's another quick update. Adding in here, you can see that the reference to what permitted plant species are allowed, clarifying that those found in the CBU, City of Bloomington Utilities, Department Stormwater Design Manual will also be allowed because obviously there will be stormwater on sites. And then we have just some table reference numbers. So you can see here, table 417 was numbered incorrectly. And so that was fixed on a couple of pages. And then we had a couple of typos as well. And then a typo and an extra ellipses on this page. So really all just catching mostly typing errors here. And yeah, so the Plan Commission recommended approval, and I can answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Scanlon about this petition? Councilmember Rallo?
I don't know if this is the appropriate place. I had a question about corrections in floodplain 20.04.040.
That will be in the next one.
Next one.
Yep.
Okay. I'll reserve.
Thank you. Other questions? I know it's hard when there are so many of them.
I know, sorry.
That are so similar. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you for all your hard work on this. I just noticed that a correction that I'm addressing as an amendment to Ordinance 2025-12 also shows up in the red line text that goes with 2025-11, and that is that in the mixed-use downtown district, generally, street trees shall be planted a minimum of 5 feet, et cetera, subject to approval by transportation and traffic engineer has been crossed out, and city engineer has been used to replace that. But from your memo, I think that change was not passed by Plan Commission. So do we need to fix it in this ordinance as well as in the next one? Or?
I will let, Ms. Lennon answer that.
That was that, no, this 2025-11 addressed other issues, technical corrections, so it wasn't necessarily to make an amendment of -11,
Okay.
but that -12 would correct the error that you were seeking to correct through the amendment to -12.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify that for me, so in 11, it doesn't make that correction, but in 12, it does.
And then there's an
But
amendment
it's just
that
in
will
the
undo
red
it.
line, yeah, okay, thanks.
The gist is that 2025-11 seeks to make other changes, technical corrections. So I don't think it's necessary to make an amendment to -11 and send it back to the Plan Commission because the issue is corrected in 2025-12.
Yeah, and so like it's not on that table of citations.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I got that, because I just noticed that too, Councilmember Piedmont Smith. I was like, oh, wait. Are there other questions on 2025-11? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and go to the public. If there's any public comments on this particular ordinance, Ordinance 2025-11, making these technical changes to the UDO. I'll give people a minute on Zoom to use the reactions time to raise their hand. If you're in chambers and would like to make a comment, you can go ahead and approach the podium. Not seeing anybody in chambers. Has anybody raised their hand on Zoom? No, thank you. I'll just. If you have a comment, you need to come up and introduce yourself. And yeah. You can find this packet online if that's helpful. All right, seeing no public comments, that brings us back to any council member comments related to 2025-11. Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll on ordinance 2025-11?
Councilmember Ruff,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Stossberg,
Yes.
Daley,
Yes.
Zulik,
Yes.
and Asari.
Yes.
Thank you, that passes unanimously. Next.
I move that ordinance 2025-12 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to introduce ordinance 2025-12. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2025-12, to amend Title 12, Unified Development Ordinance of the Bloomington Municipal Code regarding amendments and updates set forth in Bloomington Municipal Code 20.02 and 20.04. The synopsis is much shorter. This petition contains amendments in the UDO related to design standards in Chapters 2 and 4. There are 58 amendments identified.
Thank you.
I move ordinance 2025-12 be adopted.
Second.
I also believe that we have an amendment on this. Do we want to do the amendment first, or do we want to have the introduction first? Let's go ahead and introduce it first, I guess. So, once again, Ms. Scanlon, if you want to introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you. Jackie Scanlon, Planning and Transportation. For this petition, this is related to changes of the UDO in Chapter 2 and Chapter 4. So that's our zoning districts and our development standards and incentives chapters. This was seen by Plan Commission also at its March 10th hearing as petition CO0725. And was also sent to the Common Council with a positive recommendation, 6-0. It was amended at the hearing, so we'll talk about that briefly in a moment. The Plan Commission voted to remove a reference change that we had recommended that would have made it the responsibility that tree grades in the public right-of-way would have become the responsibility of the urban forester as far as approving their design. But the Plan Commission decided not to take up that suggestion at this time, and so removed that. And then, so we will continue to have that discussion with engineering and Parks and Recreation, so you may see that again next year. That is part of the amendment that you will see shortly because of the way that I sent it to you. We just wanted to be clear what was done. So again, zoning districts and development standards, they kind of run the gamut. I'll go over a few here. We are looking at zoning district setback changes, allowing for setbacks to be reduced for primary buildings if they're adjacent to a platted alley. That is something that we see especially in the old platted areas of the neighborhoods near downtown, that those homes often need a little bit of extra, need an allowance to be able to be closer to those setbacks. So we added that in the districts that represent those primarily single-family areas, so the R3 and the R4, so you can see those added to these tables. We also added that front building setback standards in some of our denser districts, so residential high density should be determined by that underlying zoning district, as opposed to the R4, which you can see on the right side of the table. That allows for a little bit more continuity of buildings along those frontages, as we are seeing a lot of redevelopment in those areas. So added to the MS, so areas near campus on the north side of town, primarily west of campus, and then we have other areas as well. Added that if you are developing single family or a plex, that you can use those district standards. And then part of the amendment that you'll see is making sure that it's clear that this third note, that the front building setback, again, will use the underlying zoning district, that note be added here as well as it is in the other tables. So that clarification is being done with an amendment. So quickly going through, allowing some more opportunities, different design requirements as opportunities to call out primary pedestrian entrances that are required. So here allowing for lighting to count toward the identification of those areas and clarifying how those can be measured. We are doing some, in some of our districts, there are height maximums based on stories that can be increased, as you know, through the use of incentives. So something that we found in code is that while in those areas a step back of higher floors is appropriate, that wasn't built into the code because they aren't allowed to be that tall by right. But once they use incentives, then they can become tall enough that we needed to include that they need to be stepped back as well in our primarily smaller building areas. So that has been added here. Street lighting, clarifying who should be involved in the approval of pedestrian skills street lighting in new development. So making sure that it's clear that the city engineer and Board of Public Works can be involved in that. Adding, again, some of those same references to the corresponding tables in Table 4 that correspond with the tables in Table 2 for our zoning districts. Some people used Chapter 2 and some people use Chapter 4, so just making sure that those are aligned. Doing some changes to our exceptions to setbacks to make it clear when, for example, exterior stairs can encroach into a setback, and then clarifying something that went into the code a few years ago where we had worked with the local architectural community related to being able to kind of add a section to the front of your building if your building historically didn't really have a front entrance. That was something we worked on with Ms. Clapper, you may recall, and so clarifying a little bit more on how that design works there under front entry exceptions. This is something we have been working on with the Environmental Commission for a little while. When we did the major update, we changed how we measure the riparian buffer. And instead of going from the top of the stream bed, we were measuring from the center of the stream. They had some concerns for our larger streamed areas about how that could negatively affect the stream. So we worked with them, presented this at the Environmental Commission and got their okay. And so basically we identified areas where Jackson Creek and Clear Creek are more substantial and need more protection and increase the width in those areas. So if you have a creek in your backyard that's small and maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense for you to have a large riparian buffer, that is still something that's kind of built into the code. But now if you are adjacent to Jackson Creek or Clear Creek in these areas that are identified here, south of 2nd Street for Jackson Creek and south of Grimes for Clear Creek, then you will have the additional buffer in those locations. Something that some of you may remember, for some reason this document is just in some way possessed, and so you'll see a number of these that are crossed out and then they say the same words. I just don't know how to make not do that. So There is no change to those. It has something to do with the being able to click through the document once it's done. So sorry about that. I know that's confusing. Floodway and floodway fringe, those are the terms that we use now, and Mr. Grulich may be able to speak more to that if you have a question, Mr. Rollo. But just, I believe this is just updating the language to make it be in line with how we use that language at this time, after we did the updates with the state last year. Then we have a couple of clarifications for separations and drives. Again, always trying to have that balance between, wanting people to be able to access their properties in the most functional way, and also not wanting to have basically a driveway parallel with the road within a certain distance where that can be confusing for other drivers. So I'll kind of working on making that make sense. Clarifying that driveway and street separation standards that exist now apply along the same side of the street. As most of that is what we've been doing for some time, but just putting that into code so it's clear that we're not considering the driveways on the other side of the street when we're measuring. This is the provision you may be familiar with that requires driveway access in some of our zoning districts. So in our primarily single family and our multifamily, our main multifamily district, as well as downtown, and then we're adding in the MS, which is the mixed-use student housing, and that is because some of the areas north of town, as I was mentioning earlier, west of campus, they are built in the same way that the neighborhoods right downtown are, with alleys, and so we are requiring access there as well. Some clarification on when tree plots are required and how pedestrian easements are required when those things have to be put on site. Again, adding in the MS zoning districts so that it can be treated the same as the other districts related to access from improved alleys. Here we have parking spaces off of alleys. We have, as people are redeveloping the properties north of here and near campus, trying to clarify or figuring out a way to clarify so that those spaces can be safe, where again, they're not parking parallel with the alley and pulling out. So giving a minimum degrees of 45 that those spaces have to be. Clarifying when EV spaces are required. Some of those have to be accessible for van. Clarifying that some of the bike parking has to be outside of the building that's required when you do development. Adding a minimum percentage for upper floors when we're looking at transparent glass for buildings. Again, that's something we've run into where it isn't common, but because it's cheaper, we have had some suggestions, or what's the word I'm looking for? Some proposals that don't have glass on the upper floors, that they would just use those side for stairwell or bathroom or something where it wouldn't be required. And so clarifying that if you're facing a road, you're going to need to do that. And so that's what this one is doing as well. I think we're almost through. Clarifying when species diversity is required and that applies to shrubs as well. We have that regulation for trees and now extending it to shrubs. Here indicating that if you are going to use an existing tree toward your requirement for what needs to be installed, it has to kind of make sense that you can't use a tree on your site that isn't near the road as a street tree to kind of put in no street trees. So we've had an issue with that, and so trying to figure that out, clarify that in the code. Once again, the old chestnut of trying to figure out where we can put in mulch and where that makes sense and how much of your property can cover it. We've had a number of properties in town entirely covered in mulch, and trying to figure out what the best way is to allow, for people to use that product in a responsible way, but also not use it so that they can neglect their properties. So these are the changes we've come to this time. This year, adding a maximum coverage on a property totally, and then clarifying what those diameters are around plantings, including perennials and grasses, which were not previously included, and clarifying that they can be used in defined paths of a certain width, which is 4 feet maximum. So again, we saw that clarifying that the approved species can come from the Stormwater Design Manual. And Here we have street trees, another clarification about where street trees should be along certain roadways. And the transportation and traffic engineer / city urban forester that I explained earlier, that we had recommended this change. Plan Commission removed that, as noted here, removed by Plan Commission, but the amendment that you will see will make it clear that the language should remain subject to approval by the transportation and traffic engineer. When we are looking at buffer yards, clarifying that you cannot put your dumpster in those areas that are supposed to be vegetated, removing the possibility for raised planters when you're doing vacant lot landscaping, clarifying that those need to be put back to grass. And then some light trespass clarification, again, mostly related to residential districts that could be surrounding you and making sure that you're not having light trespass in those areas. And then we have a number of sign regulation changes, clarifying height for a number of our permitted and exempted existing signs, that they should not be taller than 6 feet, which is standard for our other signs that already exist. And doing some clarification with projecting signs once those came into the code. A number of years ago, we probably should have taken this out to be, so we are doing that now, clarifying what can be done as far as wall or awning or projecting sign in the right-of-way, and trying to clarify what can be set on roofs, as we've seen those kind of come back, people interested in doing those, and just some other kind of sign design standards. Additionally, electronic reader boards that will not be permitted on signs larger than 125 square feet. So we have not changed the percentage that those can be of a sign, or how large the electronic area can be. If a whole sign is larger than 125 square feet, you may not utilize the electronic reader board. And then just some other clarifications here, again, about projecting awning signs. Some of this, because the signs are separated by district, it's the same regulation clarified for each district. So again, projecting awning signs. We were asked by engineering to clarify that any right-of-way that's being dedicated is fee simple, as opposed to an easement. Not something we've run into issues with, but just something to be clarified. And here in the subdivision control, requiring that utility lines be buried. And that's the last thing. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for letting me go over those.
Thank you. Are there questions for Ms. Scanlon about Ordinance 2025-12? Councilmember Rallo.
Thank you. First, let me say I'm always impressed by your knowledge of the code, and so I look forward to examining this a little bit more. And I know there was an oversight that the stream width measuring from, we used to measure from the sides of the stream, and then we decided to do it in the center, and then clearly that was reducing the stream buffer. So you attended to that in the buffer width of Jackson Creek and Clear Creek, and Clear Creek south of Grimes Lane. And you talk about the main branches, but my familiarity is that there are two branches of Clear Creek that are both fairly substantial in terms of their width. So Clear Creek, sort of the west branch, which runs, south of Rockport Road, and then the center one, which runs downtown, and they kind of join down at near Fairfax Road. Which one is addressed, and why not include both?
Thank you. Eric Krulik, Development Services Manager. So when we looked at those streams, we certainly saw very clearly that the main branches of Clear Creek and Jackson Creek were much wider, and those were the areas that the Environmental Commission were most concerned with. So when you look at those west branches or the east branches of those various streams, it's a lot different, and they can be very narrow in some places. And so those were not the main areas of the streams that the Environmental Commission was concerned with. So that's why we focused on the main branches. And the reason that we chose those particular locations at Grimes and Dodds is that's where they become daylighted. They're underground for most of that. When you start dealing with the West Branch and the East Branches, as you move upstream, those become very small. And so what we were trying to balance where were the larger areas where the streams were most visible, most prevalent, larger in capacity. And like I said, those were the areas that the Environmental Commission were most concerned with. It's very challenging with these riparian buffer standards because we deal with a wide range of creeks and streams and water bodies that occur on properties. And so we're really struggled with trying to draw the line of, where is a more appropriate, wider buffer appropriate, and where is, a little bit narrower, that where you measure from the center of the stream bank more appropriate to make it easier and less cumbersome sometimes on the adjacent property owners. So again, this was kind of just following guidance from the Environmental Commission, and like Mrs. Scanlon said, we ran this by them after we came up with the language, and that was satisfactory for them.
So my understanding then is that Clear Creek, the western branch, which is along Clear Creek Trail, is not included.
Correct. That would not be part of the 50-foot buffer. So, it's important to keep in mind here that this, in essence, creates a 100-foot buffer on both sides of the stream, which is very substantial. But yeah, the west branches or the east branches of Clear Creek or Jackson Creek would still be measured from the center and have a 75-foot buffer, whereas the main branches now would have a 100-foot buffer.
Okay, but, and for clarification, that western branch of Clear Creek along Clear Creek Trail will have a zone of 25 feet on each side of the stream.
Yeah, so
measured from the center
it
or
would have
from the
three
side?
25s, yeah.
From the side of the stream or from the center?
center of the stream.
From the center. Okay. I have more questions, but I can wait.
Okay, are there other questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith. Oh, and then we have an amendment, is that?
Yes, I'm just following up on Councilmember Rallo's question. So at what point is Clear Creek in the 100-foot buffer?
So when it becomes daylighted at Grimes, and then Jackson Creek is where First Street is, as I recall. Over by the
Okay,
mall.
so I thought you said Dodds and Grimes. I was
I'm sorry, I didn't mean,
At Grimes?
Yeah, at Grimes,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Other question, Councilmember Ralph.
This is a question about the section on mulching as it relates to single-family, duplex, triplex, fourplex uses. It says, and I'm sorry, I probably just misunderstood or missed, or I haven't seen the whole entire code in context, but the excerpt we have, occupy no more than 30% of a property. Does that include the footprint of the building as part of the?
Yeah, so that would be your property overall has a size to it, so no more than 30% of that could be mulch. So the house would, while that's not factored against it because it's not covered with mulch, we just look at the property size and no more than 30% of that could be mulch. So again, this is trying to balance, and this is something, a very nuanced thing that we deal with where, property owners and single family, we don't really deal with this too much, but we have to be clear across the UDO in terms of how this is written and applied. Single family owners, they have various flower beds and things around their property. So we're trying to balance allowing mulch, allowing people to do the various things without allowing somebody to just cover their entire property with mulch or stone or something.
Okay, can I follow up? So let's just say one of these small lots in one of our core neighborhoods has a large garden. And that entire garden is mulched except where the plants come up, right? And then they have pathways going in the yard to and from around, and they've mulched those or made those out of stone or pavers. I can see that getting to more than 30% pretty easily with the garden. So how would that be handled in this?
Yep, again, great question. So, we haven't really, with gardens, we haven't really dealt with this problem of, how much of that is mulch, how much of that is plants. And really this is only something that's going to come up when we're dealing with a complaint or a violation where something has gone obviously way over this, and we're trying to enforce some section here. A lot of these, we introduced this standard last year just to try to guide the mulch a little bit for single family. So with a lot of these, we introduce a standard, we kind of see how it goes throughout the course of a year. If we encounter problems and we're like, hey, this isn't working the way that we wanted or envisioned, we'll come back and change it next year. That's one of the benefits with doing these annual amendments is, we try something, see how it looks. If it's having a negative effect that we didn't foresee, then we'll change that and come back.
Okay, and you envision enforcement being complaint-based.
Yes.
But theoretically, you could have feuding neighbors complaining about each other about things like this that wouldn't really be something that we would want. Okay. Well, thank you for your responses. This is going to be something to think about. Thanks.
Do you want to expand a little bit on why having your yard covered with mulch is problematic? Because people might be going, what's wrong with mulch?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've dealt with a couple of situations, and it kind of runs the gamut from single family to commercial, where people have taken all of the landscaping, all of the grass off of their property and either covered it with mulch or stone. So obviously, a lot of the rules and regulations in the UDO are designed to accomplish various goals within the city. Increasing biomass, having living things on your property is very important. So covering your entire property with mulch or stone goes against a lot of what we're trying to deal with, with climate change, stormwater runoff, like I said, increasing biomass on a general property. So that's why we even have rules and regulations for mulch and stone. We don't want an entire property covered with mulch or covered with stone. So this is one of many attempts in the UDO to try to minimize how that happens, to make sure that, you've got grass, you've got shrubs and trees that are on a property, and, somebody just hasn't stripped it down to nothing and covered it with mulch and stone. And, we do unfortunately deal with that occasionally.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Councilmember Rallo, second round.
Thank you. My next question is about feedback. 20.04.040, Section E, provisions for flood hazard reduction. And it says, all development shall comply with the provisions of this section, and then it gives conditional uses. And it lists the conditional uses. For my first question is, my general question is, and it gives 5 conditional uses. The language is changed from flood fringe. The following are conditional uses in the flood fringe, subject to approval under section law. And it's changed from flood fringe to flood and floodway. So my understanding is that floodway is flowing water, and the flood fringe is it's not flowing, but it's on the fringe. It's flooded, right? So under 1E, it lists buildings and structures that could be conditional uses within a floodway of flowing water. That doesn't make sense to me.
So we were required to update our floodplain ordinance a few years ago and adopted the state floodplain model. And so DNR does allow for buildings and structures that are in the floodway. Obviously, there are restrictions for those in terms of you have to elevate those. You have to have a permit for those that regulate how much fill you can place. So DNR has allowances and restrictions that govern what you can and can't do in a floodway. So by adopting that, we have also, our previous zoning code had certain uses that were allowed in those districts, within the floodway and the floodway fringe. So when we adopted the DNR model ordinance, while they do allow for structures and things in the floodway, and the zoning code does allow for certain things, permeable parking lots that are in the floodway are allowed, but they have to be permeable. We did not update, or we missed this small citation there that just said floodway fringe or flood fringe, and we didn't say anything about the floodway. So if somebody were to come in and meet all of DNR and FEMA's requirements, restrictions for buildings or parking areas or driveways, we had to make sure that we had a section of the code that said you could do that as a conditional use, subject to all of the requirements of DNR and FEMA. So we were just syncing this up to what DNR and FEMA might allow. So that's why we are including floodway and floodway fringe, because both of those are part of the special flood hazard area that we regulate.
It just seems so ill-advised to build within the floodway. I mean,
Sure.
the floodway fringe, I was uncomfortable with to begin with, but now we're under new direction to comply with state code. And so we don't have discretion if they meet the standards of the DNR. They can say, whatever, they're going to elevate the structure, they're going to put it on some sort of pilings or something in order to...
Yeah, so it's certainly very difficult and very cumbersome to try to build buildings in the floodway. You can't have residences in the floodway at all. And we don't deal with this very much, but there are some portions of the city, especially along College and Walnut, around 1st and 2nd, that are entirely encumbered in the floodway. And by allowing nothing within those particular areas, we really render those properties undevelopable. So that particular area is something that I think certainly is prime for some redevelopment opportunity, and so we do have to make some allowance for uses to occur in that area. And it is a conditional use, so we can evaluate that on a situational basis if that's appropriate.
Could I just follow up with something related? So our state legislature just passed House Enrolled Act 1037, which affects stormwater rules, Indiana Code 361314. Is that going to, are we going to have to amend our code in order to reflect those changes?
Well,
Because
so that deals more with erosion control and what CBU can or cannot regulate as part of their stormwater management permit. I think we're still evaluating very heavily, what the impacts are on Title 15 that we just approved earlier. So we're seeing what legal has advised, but I don't think that implicates the UDO. That'll implicate CBU more.
Okay.
But that shouldn't have any impact on the floodplain rules and regulations.
So it's to be determined, but your department issues notice of violations for violations of stormwater.
No, so that's changed a little bit when stormwater management went to CBU exclusively. We don't deal with that unless it's tracking, but I think even then it really falls on CBU. But we can maybe look into a little bit of that for enforcement. But
My question to CBU and to corporate counsel, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great, thanks.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith, do you want to introduce the amendment?
Sure. I would like to move Amendment 1 to Ordinance 2025-12.
Second.
So this amendment just makes a few corrections in Table 02-9 of Attachment A of this legislation. There was just a footnote missing on the last column of that table, Table 029. There should have been a footnote number 3 in the heading of that last column. And then Table 04-2, titled Residential District Dimensional Standards. So in both Table 04-2 and Table 04-3, there's just a slight correction in a footnote. Instead of saying it shall be determined by the standards of the base's zoning district, it should be the standards of the base zoning district. Just a small thing, which I wouldn't have done, but I had some other ones, so it made sense to correct that as well. And then the last correction is what we mentioned earlier, is that the deletion of transportation and traffic engineer as far as approval of sidewalk grates for trees It was proposed by staff that transportation and traffic engineer be replaced by city urban forester, but that was not approved by the Plan Commission, so we need to undo that change. So those are the 4 things in this amendment.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on the amendment? Okay, let's go ahead and go to the public then. If you want to make a public comment just on this amendment, which corrects 3 things that are typographical essentially, and then one that is just kind of a technicality in terms of what the Plan Commission decision was around the redlining. So again, I'm asking for public comment on the amendment to Ordinance 2025-12. If you're on Zoom and would like to make a public comment, you can use the Reactions tab to raise your hand or send a chat message to the host. And in chambers, you can really race and run to the podium because, yeah, nobody's going to do that. All right. Thank you. Is there anybody who's raised their hand on Zoom?
No.
Okay, thank you so much. Going back to council, are there any council comments related to the amendment? I'll just say thank you to Councilmember Piedmont Smith for noticing those little details. I appreciate it. Will the clerk please call the roll on Amendment 1 to Ordinance 2025-12?
Councilmember Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Stossberg?
Yes.
Daley?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Asare?
Yes.
And Ruff?
Yes.
Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. So now we're back to councilmember questions still on the ordinance as amended. Was there anything that came up for anybody during that amendment? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the public comment again. So now this is public comment on anything in this ordinance 2025-12 as amended. So anything that you heard in the presentation or in the question and answer period afterwards. If there's anybody in chambers who would like a comment, please make your way to the podium. If you're online, you can raise your hand using the Reactions tab or send a chat message to the host. I don't see anybody moving in chambers right now, so I'm just going to give it a minute to see if anybody raises their hand on Zoom. And I'll just wait for some nice affirmative nod from staff over there. We're real quiet about technical amendments on the for the UDO. Thank you. Coming back to council then for any last comments. Does anybody have any comments on Ordinance 2025-12 as amended? Councilmember Rallo.
Well, thank you for making these changes. I'm a little trepidatious about Clear Creek. I'd like to maybe go and evaluate it myself and see why that wasn't included, but I appreciate taking action on both of these major waterways and the riparian areas in our community. I am concerned about the state bill that's stripping cities and counties of stricter laws to control erosion control and so forth. That was a big thing here in the 90s when I was on the Environmental Commission. We literally had to go out and do site inspections and accumulate photographic evidence and bring it to the planning staff and say, we need to change our code because we're silting in local waterways. And so I know some people have celebrated this in the community. I think that our code is good as it is, and it certainly hasn't stopped development in our community. And it says something about whether we have home rule and whether the state imposes their standards on us instead of giving us the right to basically regulate the environment as we see fit in order for the public health and well-being of the environment. So that's a concern of mine, but that concerns CBU now. So I'll be inquiring about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other council member comments on Ordinance 2025-12 as amended? All right, seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Stossberg?
Yes.
Daley?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
Asare?
Yes.
Ruff? Rallo?
Yes.
Thank you, and that passes unanimously. Next.
I move ordinance 2025-13 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to introduce ordinance 2025-13. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2025-13 to amend Title 20, the Unified Development Ordinance of the Bloomington Municipal Code regarding amendments and updates set forth in Bloomington Municipal Code 20.03. The synopsis is this petition contains amendments in the UDO related to use-specific standards in Chapter 3. There are 10 amendments identified.
Thank you.
I move ordinance 2025-13 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you once again. Ms. Scanlon, you can state your
thank
name
you.
again for the record.
Jackie Scanlon.
Thank you so much.
Planning and Transportation. This petition, ordinance 2025-13, was seen by the Plan Commission also at its March 10th hearing as Z00825 and was sent to the Common Council with a positive recommendation of 6-0. This ordinance covers our proposed changes for Chapter 3, which is use regulations. There are only 10, so the last one was our biggest one. And this petition deals with the following: removing separate utility requirements in plexus, clarifying how setbacks are determined for parking that is interior to a building, clarifying ground floor residential locations in our downtown zoning district, clarifying when perimeter sidewalks are required in our cottage home development projects, and adding a dwelling size maximum, excluding electric charging units from maximum dispenser amounts, adding use-specific standards for vehicle fleet operations, and clarifying temporary structure permitting, and allowing signage on construction fencing. So as I said, excluding the requirement for separate utility meters in plexes, what we have found as we've been able to do more research over time, obviously plexes came in about 4 years ago, is that they can still easily be condoized or owned separately if they have a master meter, if they share meters, and that in other places that has not been kind of the problem that we thought that it might be for people to be able to do that. So in cases, it is just an extra expense, so making them more difficult to do. And so because we found that it was so prevalent to be able to do them and still be able to sell them separately without separate utility meters, we decided to take this out. It also helps for conversions of existing buildings as well. And here for parking, these are all under use-specific standards. Parking in multifamily dwelling developments, clarifying that the vehicle parking and drive aisles that directly access those parking, so the aisles you're pulling out into, have to be located at least 20 feet behind your building facade. And then we put in an exception for small lots, because part of the reason why we haven't done this in the past is that makes it basically impossible to put ground floor parking if you have a small lot. So putting in an exception to still allow those small incremental developments to happen. But in a larger development, that parking has to be put back so that front space has to be utilized to be able to interface with the public area as well. So in the downtown zoning district, MD for ground floor units, indicating that those need to be raised. This is language that is used in the TRO as well, so expanding that to our MD district, we think will help development in that area. This section here is for our cottage development. We have done one cottage development, and so we're looking at ways to make that more feasible. In the particular cottage development that we did, it just would not make sense for them to have a perimeter sidewalk around the property there, and so we looked at some of our other maybe potential available sites and determined that is something that we want to change from a shall to a may, that we can determine if sidewalks would be useful and that they wouldn't have to get a variance if, for example, their site just doesn't make sense to have the sidewalk. And then adding in a maximum unit size of 1,200 square feet to get to the more traditional idea of cottage home development, as opposed to just a number of large units on one lot. Here we are clarifying in the vehicle fuel station that electric charging stations do not count against your maximum dispenser unit, adding in some use-specific standards for vehicle fleet operations. And you will see one amendment related to this, 15A. So right now it reads, in the MM and MN zoning districts, only vehicle fleet operations that do not include the exclusive use of autonomous vehicle services are permitted. MM and MN are our least impactful mixed-use districts. And so the amendment in your packet will strike the word exclusive, so that if the vehicle fleet operation is utilizing autonomous vehicles, they will not be able to be in those districts, which we agree makes sense. Let's see, almost through here, I think. Clarifying some size restrictions for temporary structures. We get a surprising number of calls about tents that stay up for long periods of time and get kind of junky, and so clarifying when permits are needed for those, and that signage can be on construction fencing is something else that takes a surprising amount of our time. So I can answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions, Councilmember Rallo?
Yeah, I was contacted today about the matter of the meters for the duplexes. That, according to her, the county building inspectors require individual meters, and she maintains that this is state code. Do you have any?
I don't
any
know.
idea about that?
I would say that if that is, then they will still have to do it, but not because of us, right? They would be doing it because of state code, and we don't have to allow it as something in our regulations. If that's in the state building code or the administrative code that they enforce, then they would continue to do that. It doesn't matter whether it's in the UDO or not. I do not know offhand if that is something that is required.
So I guess the county inspector maintained that this is a fire issue. Do you have any?
We have not been contacted by them with concerns about that, no.
Did you speak to the county building inspector about this?
No, we did not.
Okay, so it may be counter to state code, we don't know, so that's yet to be determined. But in any case, it's moot because state code would essentially
correct
invalidate it, even though it's there. So we may have to change this back at some point.
If it's part of the building, there are a number of things in the building code that aren't in our code. For example, the way that we regulate ADUs, they don't regulate them the same way. They make them build them to the standards of a duplex, but we would not. So it's possible that they will hold them to that standard even if we don't, and I don't think that we would have to put it back in because ours isn't a building code, it's a zoning code.
I'm thinking that I'm generally at peace with these, and I haven't had a chance to explore this. Could you determine the status of this after?
Oh yes, yeah, for sure.
Okay, and get back.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Councilmember Asari.
This is something I should have noticed before, but did not, so apologies. But can you walk us through the reasoning for restricting autonomous vehicle fleets?
Yes, okay, so we just as kind of like in the air of urban planning, in other places, they have kind of come in as a surprise use that isn't regulated, and therefore, a lot of times you have to pick a kind of a similar use, and then they're allowed in those locations. So the idea with going ahead and pre-regulating these, which you have already started, never mind, sorry, it's in this. We're bringing another part later. Sorry, my brain, it's in two places. So this type of use in particular is kind of primed for development patterns similar to storage units, where property will be used, and especially in a cheaper way, where property will be used for storage and sending out of these autonomous vehicles, where there actually won't be really any employment generated there, that type of thing. So So that could be long-term, or they could be holding it for development later. And so we don't love the proliferation of that type of use, especially with our limited land. And additionally, you know, kind of like we were caught off guard with the scooters, trying to kind of get ahead of that so that if they do come here, we know where they're going, and it's not kind of eating up our limited amount of land.
Can I ask a follow-up question? We're not limiting autonomous vehicles in Bloomington, but rather the placement of their fleet centers,
correct.
right? So we're particularly interested in like an Amazon warehouse, as an example, that might have drones or something like that, or like a Waymo coming and setting up shop right there. But this does not preclude Waymo from being able to come to Bloomington and operate a self-driving taxi here, for example.
Yes, correct. So you will see, we have some, the second piece of this will come forward, and so it will be added to the use table in some districts, but just not all districts.
Got it. Got it. And then which answers all the follow-on questions that I had. But one thing for that next one is we should be really clear about defining autonomous here, just because, I mean, at what stage does autonomous start, right? And especially with like the things that Tesla is doing right now, and they're even at level 2 autonomous, but somebody could create a whole fleet of Teslas, right?
Sure.
And,
yes.
And happy to help with that
Great.
language.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith, would you like to introduce your amendment?
Oh, sure. I'd like to move Amendment 1 to Ordinance 2025-13.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead.
This is, speaking of autonomous vehicles, this is in the portion of the code where it talks about vehicle fleet operations on page 106 of the UDO in Attachment A to Ordinance 2025-13. It currently says that in MM and MN zoning districts, only vehicle fleet operations that do not include the exclusive use of autonomous vehicle services are permitted. And this amendment would strike the word exclusive. So any use of autonomous vehicle services in fleet operations would not be allowed in those districts. And that I did check with staff, and that was actually the intention.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there questions on the amendment? Okay, no questions on the amendment from council members. So let's go ahead and go to the public for public comment on Amendment 1 to Ordinance 2025-13. If there's any member of the public who would like to make a comment about the amendment, striking the word exclusive from the vehicle fleet operations. If you're in chambers, you can make your way to the podium. If you're online, you can go ahead and use the reactions tab to raise your hand or send a chat message to the host. And I'll just give it a minute for anybody to step forth. Has anybody raised a hand?
No hands are raised.
Okay, thank you. Going back to council then, are there any lingering questions or comments about this amendment? Councilmember, sorry.
This might be more appropriate to Director Scanlon. If we remove exclusive, does that not mean that any fleet that had any autonomous vehicles in it would then be prohibited?
That is what it means, but only in these two districts. So these are the ones that are like most closely embedded in neighborhoods.
Right.
Like if you think of like MN is like the restaurant on 2nd Street near Henderson.
Right.
Like these are the ones that are in residential areas, basically, not on our arterials or in our more commercial areas. So that is what it would mean.
But then is it because I'm saying, does the introduction of an autonomous vehicle create within a fleet create the problem, or
So I think for us the problem was when we initially started discussing it, we did not have the word exclusive, and the problem was, and I think we talked about this a little bit with Councilperson Piedmont Smith, it's like, where do you draw that line of saying 50%, 5 cars, whatever? Because these sites are really pretty small. So we are just at this point, until it becomes maybe a more like proliferated use, just saying no autonomous vehicles for this particular use. It would also, where it's unlikely that we will see this use in those areas. People need space, and these zoning districts don't have that. So we felt comfortable with just saying none, and then if it becomes a problem, we would come back to you and explain that, but we don't foresee that being an issue.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember? Sorry. Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or Councilmember comments on this amendment?
President Strasburg, if I may make, Mr. Grulich made a good point for Councilperson Rollo. We did speak with CBU about the utility stuff before and there was no mention, they did not have a concern, but we will check with the building commissioner as well. I had forgotten that we had talked to them about potentially doing that, but we'll double check for the state code as well.
Okay, I think that was a general comment about the whole ordinance,
shoot,
right?
sorry, it was.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry.
All right, so if there are no further comments from council members on the amendment, if the clerk could please call the roll on Amendment 1 to Ordinance 2025-13.
Councilmember Strasburg?
Yes.
Daley?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
SRA?
Yes.
Ruff? Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. So now we are back to Ordinance 2025-13 as amended. We've already gone through several council member questions. Are there any additional council member questions on this ordinance? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and go to the public. So now this is about for public comment on the ordinance as amended as a whole. So any of those 10 changes. If there's any member of the public who would like to make a comment on Ordinance 2025-13 as amended, please make your way to the podium. If you're online, go ahead and raise your hand using the reactions tab or send a chat message to the host, and I will just give it a minute. Are there any members of the public who've raised their hand on Zoom? Okay, thank you. So I think that recycles us back to council again. Are there any council members who would like to make a closing comment on Ordinance 2025-13 as amended? Seeing no comments, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Daley?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
SRA?
Yes.
Ruff? Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
And Strasburg?
Yes. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Next.
Ordinance 2025-14 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to introduce Ordinance 2025-14. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2025-14 to amend Title 20, Unified Development Ordinance of the Bloomington Municipal Code regarding amendments and updates set forth in Bloomington Municipal Code 20.05, 20.06, and 20.07. The synopsis is this petition contains amendments in the UDO related to use-specific standards in Chapters 5, 6, and 7, and there are 11 amendments identified.
Thank you.
I move Ordinance 2025-14 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Scanlon, you are on again.
Thank you. Last one. This was heard by the Plan Commission, again at its March 10th hearing, forwarded to Common Council with a positive recommendation of 6-0 as Z00925. And this is for Chapter 5, Subdivision Standards, Chapter 6, Administration and Procedures, and Chapter 7, Definitions. So the first one you see here on the screen is related to our Karst Conservancy easements and disallowing mowing in those. We have found that to be kind of a difficult subject with all the refuse and things that are created by doing landscaping in the Karst Conservancy easements and then leaving them in the Karst feature. So clarifying that should not be done. The next is removing one of our previous triggers for major site plan review, development located within 500 feet of State Road 37 or Interstate 69. it was leftover from the old code and not something that we have seen used, and so taking that out of there. This is just cleaning up the way that the applicability section in our demolition delay permit section of Chapter 6 was written. So not changing the content, but just splitting it into two sections for easier applicability. Here we are looking at our floodplain development permit and including some exemptions. So the following activities are exempted from requiring the floodplain development permit, including installation of underground utilities that do not require any fill, construction of sidewalks or similar features at existing grade, and signs. As our floodplain development permit has kind of become much more robust in the last year or so than it had been previously, we have run into a number of instances with city departments where they're doing projects described here that will not have an effect on the floodway or floodplain in general, and it just takes kind of a lot of time to confirm that and then go ahead and issue the floodplain development permit when there is no effect. And so excluding those things, and we will still work with those departments to make sure that they meet these thresholds and do not have to get the permit. And that is our senior environmental planner, Rachel Johnson, does that. Okay, so now we're looking at subdivision procedures, and we are adding in, these are exempt. These are exemptions from subdivisions. The first one is something more commonly called a lot line shift, and so clarifying that you kind of can't, we're adding in some of the provisions from the subdivision control section so that the descriptions can clarify that you can't basically make lots that don't meet certain requirements through this process. So the lot line adjustment is supposed to be, it's intended to be the exemption we get from the state is so that, you know, you can move a lot line with your neighbor, or if you want to, you know, buy their backyard and both of your properties can still meet the minimum zoning requirements. So we're just clarifying that you have to meet other things as well, like lot width requirements, that you can't make your lot non-conforming through this process. So that's what those references are for, and it's for both platted and unplatted land. That's why it appears there twice. And then for non-conforming structures, we're changing the authority to continue for the authority for those structures to exist to a lawful non-conforming structure may continue in its existing condition. However, no increase in the degree of non-conformity with any development standard is permitted except as expressly provided herein. We run into sometimes where someone has a non-conforming structure, for example, it doesn't meet setbacks on one side, but they want to do a small addition on the other side. That's not something code previously allowed, but we want to kind of make it easier for people to be able to use those structures, but not increase the degree of non-conformity. All right, so this is for non-conforming site features. Non-conforming parking, non-conforming landscaping, a lawful non-conforming site shall be brought into compliance with this UDO with any petition for new building construction or in connection with demolition of existing and construction of new buildings, except that existing non-conforming setbacks, architecture, and height for existing structures and parking can remain. So what an issue that we've come across quite a bit when people are going to do redevelopment is that they have existing structures on the site and they would like to build an additional building, and then then what happens is technically they have to get variances for the existing structures that aren't being changed, aren't being taken down, aren't new, and so this allows those existing structures to remain without a variance being required. Okay. This is just clarifying from a different section what sorts of components are not allowed for fencing. So, for example, like barbed wire. So doing a cross-reference there. And then a couple more. We're adding in gravel or stone areas to our definition of impervious surface coverage. Again, we have recently seen much more people trying to use gravel or stone to basically not have green space or drastically reduce the green space on their properties in the hopes that it won't count against their impervious surface coverage. And then here for vehicle fleet operations, adding the autonomous vehicle services and refueling stations to that definition. And I think that's it, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Do council members have questions about this ordinance 2025-14? Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
It's interesting. I didn't think of this during Plan Commission, but on the one 2006-090F1 about not being able to develop a site that has existing nonconformities without fixing those nonconformities. So, for example, would that allow, say, a residential lot to build an ADU in the back, even if it, like, say, the structure that exists doesn't meet current setbacks? So, like, if it's too close to an alley or too close to the front walk, but they want to put an ADU in the back and they would otherwise be able to.
So this is saying for existing non-conforming setbacks. So if the existing buildings don't meet, then yes, this allows those to not require setback.
Okay.
So for ADUs, for example, we've put in some other language, you know, reducing those setbacks next to alleys and stuff. But yes, this would allow, or if you were in a residential property and you were 2 feet off your house and wanted to build a garage, you would not have to address that.
Right, okay.
I think it's largely going to be for mixed use or commercial, but it could apply to residential.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at all on this one? Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and go to members of the public. If any member of the public has a comment on ordinance 2025-14, if you're online, you can use the reactions tab to raise your hand. If you're in chambers, you can sprint to the podium and make sure you're the first one to comment on the UDO changes. Is there anybody online who's raised their hand?
No.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, we'll cycle back to council then. Are there any last comments or questions from council members on ordinance 2025-14? All right, I'll just say kind of on all four of these, thank you to Ms. Scanlon and Mr. Grulich and the whole planning department. These are like small changes that we might not think necessarily like make a huge difference, but when they're dealing with compliance and the kinds of details that they have to deal with, it really makes a difference. So I appreciate you and all of your work.
And I wanted to say this before the last one, we do appreciate those of you who had the time to go through it, especially council people Strasburg and Piedmont Smith, to send us those comments. Sometimes we miss things doing this many at once, so we very much appreciate that, getting those right.
Yeah. Thank you. So without further ado, would the clerk please call the roll on ordinance 2025-14?
Councilmember Zulik?
Yes.
Asare?
Yes.
Ruff?
Yes.
Rollo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Strasburg?
Yes.
Daly?
Yes.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. I think we should give a round of applause for Ms. Scanlon and all those UDO. Very, very small changes. Moving on.
I move appropriation ordinance 2025-06 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
It's been moved to introduce appropriation ordinance 2025-06. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Appropriation ordinance 2025-06, ordinance to appropriate food and beverage tax funds to the Monroe County Capital Improvement Board. The synopsis is this ordinance appropriates $10 million from the Food and Beverage Fund to the Monroe County Capital Improvement Board to begin construction of the Monroe County Convention Center expansion project.
Thank you.
I move appropriation ordinance 2025-06 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. And it looks like we have Controller McClellan here to present.
Good evening, Council. We present this ordinance to you and ask that you do not pass this ordinance tonight. I would have liked to pulled this from your agenda earlier, but I think that you do have to take a vote on it tonight. There was a discussion between myself and the controller of the CIB about kind of the timing of the bond funds and when the project was going to get started. And there was a combination of really not knowing how the bond proceeds were exactly going to work and when the project was going to start, and we thought we were going to need to have some cash on hand to start paying invoices sooner than we did. We do not need that cash on hand. The budget for the project does include using some food and beverage tax cash on hand, but that will be later in the project. We do have the bond funds, and the process has started to use those bond funds. We do not need this appropriation. I apologize for all the time that staff and council has put into this appropriation being on your agenda, and I appreciate your time and understanding. And I don't want to take up any more of your time tonight on this, but I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Controller McClellan about this appropriation ordinance? Councilmember Asari.
I just have one, when this is on behalf of a constituent who, there was that question about the 9.8 million that's, and I know we've discussed this in so many different ways, so, we've discussed this in so many different contexts, so I think just for them to continue to follow, there was 9.8 million mentioned, but then would be of an open PO, but they say that there were lesser amounts of POs that are publicly available. Can you just clarify the state of POs to Schmidt Associates?
Yeah, there's one open PO to Schmidt Associates. There, I don't know the balance of that PO off the top of my head. I think the balance, as of like a month ago, I put in the fiscal statement, that is open. It's part of the construction plan. It's part of the budget that the CIB has. How much that they are allowed, the amount that they're allowed to spend with Schmidt Associates is very clear in their budget. We also have that number on our books. In the fiscal statement, it kind of states like, I wanted to be transparent to the council as to what the city's responsibilities are with the food and beverage tax funds. It is continuing to pay that Schmidt PO. We can also use bond funds to pay that Schmidt PO. We have to pay debt service, and we have to fund the debt service reserve fund. Those things are very spread out. We'll be collecting revenue every month from food and beverage tax funds, so those expenses will be covered when they come due. Yeah.
Forward this residents' concerns to you? Would
yes.
you? Yeah, good. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then I can see, now that I've spoken with you and I kind of know how we're going to move forward.
Yep.
After your vote tonight, I'll know a little bit more about kind of how to respond to the residents about the final picture here.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And I also apologize for the confusion that it caused to residents, and that you all have definitely heard from residents about that confusion. And I think that, bringing this ordinance forward has caused some of that confusion, so I apologize to residents for that as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, last year we looked at the open POs and there was one for a parking garage. Has that been closed?
Yes, that is closed. Okay. There's only one open PO for Schmidt Associates, and it's just for the work on the convention center.
And do you know what amount that is?
I believe I put the balance in the fiscal statement in the memo, but that was as of a month ago, and have paid a couple more invoices since then. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay, thanks.
Are there other questions? Okay, let's go to comments from the public then about Appropriation Ordinance 2025-06. If you're a member of the public who would wish to make a comment about this appropriation ordinance, if you're online, you can use the reactions tab to raise your hand, or you can send a chat message to the host. If you're in chambers, you can go ahead and make your way to the podium. So we do have a comment online tonight. Wonderful. When you're able to unmute, if you could state your name for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, Yes, this is Kevin Keogh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. The amount that is in the fiscal impact statement is $9,847,184 as the open PO. And from 2019, and this is public information, the city signed a $4.1 million contract with Schmidt Associates. And my understanding, that was the open PO, and it should equate to 10% of the building cost, which, originally in 2019, I thought it was around 42 million. I believe now it's close to 50 million. So even at the 10%, you're talking about $5 million should be the maximum for the Schmidt Associates architectural fee. And I've also been looking at the CIB, and they've said there's been expenditures made through the CIB, and it's through the city. And I really don't understand why the city is paying this through an open PO, but because I hope it gets into the soft cost of the project. So I just want to make sure that, that's going to get into when we talk about how much does this facility cost, that we include the architect's fee in that final amount. But what's been paid on and this for the CIB, there's been 9 payments, and I was only able to see 8 of the 9, but they list them, and I've already seen $2,033,000 of payments made to Schmidt for the architectural fees. So I'm very confused about this open PO amount of $9,847,000. And the key reason is, I would hope this isn't, there hasn't been, if there are changes, I would hope that the information about why have there been changes to this fee, because it seemed almost like double, which is, to me, is very concerning, because that's indicative of a cost overrun. And it's awfully early in the project to be dealing with that level of cost overrun. So that was my concern, and I'm still concerned, because even tonight, I thought there would be more specific discussion about what the open PO amount is. And it seems to me that this would be very clear, especially the amount we're talking about. It's not a small amount. $5 million, at 10% of the total cost of the building, I think would be a significant, from an internal control standpoint, this would be the limit, and something you really want to make sure you don't exceed. So anyway, that was my concern, and it continues to be my concern.
Thank you for your comment. You've run out of time. Thank you. I don't see anybody else in chambers. Does anybody else raise their hand on Zoom for public comment? Okay. Coming back to council then, are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Rallo?
Yeah, I just wondered if does the controller have any comments on Mr. Keogh's concern about the open PO, clarifying the cost?
Councilor, to check those numbers.
I'm not sure that the microphone's on anymore.
I don't have any comments. I apologize. I'll have to check those numbers.
Do we know if there's a member of the CIB online right now who might know anything about that open PO? Okay. Any other council member questions or comments? Councilmember Asari.
Just like in response to what Mr. Keogh just brought up, I mean, of course, we're not voting on this today. It's going to be removed from our agenda, but I mean,
we are voting on it today. We've been asked to vote it down.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Same thing. Yeah. So, but the the point being, I think the underlying point here is the need for consistent and transparent communication with with the public. I think something that all of us share. I think that the controller has spoken of frequently. And so as this comes back, I think we do have some time to answer those questions. So just thanking Mr. Keogh for bringing this up to begin with. And I wish that some of us had noticed it earlier. So thank you.
Any other council member comments or questions? Okay, thank you. I'll also thank Mr. Keogh for bringing that up, and also urge the public, if you have concerns like this, one of the probably most direct ways to get answers about things like this would be to go to the CIB meetings and ask the CIB exactly what those POs are for and exactly what process they're in right now, like what stage of the process they're in, because that, in terms of how the convention center is, how that whole process works, council has kind of ceded control, that kind of detailed control, to the CIB, as well as like county government has also said, okay, the CIB, they're the ones that are kind of in charge of this. And so they're the ones that are going to have the best and most accurate answers to those kinds of questions. As for this appropriation ordinance, I'm quite happy to take the request and recommendation of the controller to vote no on it. So if there are no, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I'm glad that Controller McClellan and the CIB are asking us to vote this down, because given the number of questions, I was prepared to vote no on it anyway. So I'm glad that we're all on the same page, and we do have some investigating to do before approving further funding from the food and beverage tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll then on appropriation ordinance 2025-06?
Councilmember Asari?
No.
Ruff?
No.
Rallo?
No.
Piedmont Smith?
No.
Stossberg?
No.
Daly?
No.
And Zulik?
No.
Thank you. And that fails with a vote of 0-7.
I move Resolution 2025-09 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
It's been moved and seconded to introduce Resolution 2025-09. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Will the clerk please read?
Resolution 2025-09, authorizing the allocation of the Jack Hopkins Social Services Program funds for the year 2025 and related matters. The synopsis is, this resolution brings forward the recommendations of the 2025 Jack Hopkins Social Services Committee. The principal task of the committee is to recommend funding for local social services agency proposals that best meet the program criteria and best meet the needs of the community. This resolution allocates a total of $510,377.27 to 35 different agency programs. The resolution also approves the funding agreements with these agencies and authorizes the council president to execute such agreements, accepts the report of the committee, and authorizes the chair of the committee to resolve any questions regarding the interpretation of the agreements.
Thank you.
I move Resolution 2025-09 be adopted.
Second.
Thank you. And just for clarity's sake for the public, the information about the Jack Hopkins Social Service Program for 2025, Resolution 2025-09, went out this afternoon as a packet addendum. In case anybody's going, that's not in the regular packet. So, Councilmember Asari, as chair of that committee, would you like to present?
Sure. Just for as to not waste time, Council President Stossberg has asked that we move this to our next meeting. I am totally I don't know, what do you call it? I don't care. Ambivalent to that, but if that is the feeling of everyone, I don't want to take an awful long time. in going over the sort of findings and recommendations of the committee. And so happy to present, but would rather sort of see if everybody shares Councilmember Stocksberg's opinion that we should move this to next week, because if so, we might as well just do that, and I can give said presentation then.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I move we postpone action on Resolution 2025-09 to June 4th, 2025, regular session.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone Resolution 2025-09 to June 2nd. 4th, sorry. Let me see if that is a debatable. Oh, no, hold on. Yes, that is a debatable motion, so. Yes, you may.
This was issued in a packet this afternoon, and so the public and council members have not really had time to read and digest it. So I think it's more fair to wait until our next meeting.
Thank you. Other comments related to that motion to postpone? Councilmember Rallo.
Just to say, I want to thank our staff and for preparing it in such late notice and getting it in the addendum, but I'm agreeable to postponement for the reasons stated. But I know a lot of work was done to get this expedited to be in tonight's agenda, so I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion to postpone? All right, will the clerk please call the roll then on the motion to postpone Resolution 2025-09 until June 4th?
Councilmember Ruff?
Yes.
Rallo?
Yes.
Piedmont Smith?
Yes.
Stossberg?
Yes.
Daley?
Yes.
Zulik?
Yes.
And Asari?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that resolution will be discussed on June 4th after everybody, community members and council members alike, have a little bit more of a chance to absorb that information. This moves us to our second period of public comment on items not on the agenda this evening. If any members of the public who have not already spoken at the first general period of public comment would like to make a public comment now, if you're on Zoom, you can use the reactions tab to raise your hand. And just to clarify, if you spoke on a matter of legislation, you can still speak again on a matter that is not on the agenda. I don't see anybody in chambers. Is there anybody? And I see a head nod from staff over there, or a head shake saying that there is nobody online. So we will move on to matters of council schedule. Just as a note, we have one more regular session before our summer recess, and that is on June 4th at 6:30. Are there any other scheduling matters that any council members would like to raise for the good of the order? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, there will be a meeting of the special finance committee. I don't know what order those words go in, but the special committee on finance.
The fiscal committee.
Fiscal, thank you very much. I'm the chair, but I don't know what it's called. But we will have a meeting next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. No, 2 o'clock?
I don't even know.
At 2 o'clock in the Kelly Conference Room of City Hall.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other notes on scheduling for the good of the order? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.